Hi, I am going to approach today's sutra from a somewhat unusual angle uh, because I've been trying to imagine ways of conveying something of what the sutra uh, means to me or how I experience it. It's a very, very significant sutra, and yet it's simple. It's two ordinary words, no fancy codes or anything, no anuvritti, and yet its implications and its function are so profoundly complicated, intricate, as that we can cite many examples, but I find grasping in totality, uh, you, I haven't gotten there yet. So, what I'm going to do is share a shloka from the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavadgītā. Na sato vidyate pavo, na pavo vidyate sataha, ubayorapi drushtontaha, tvanayos tattvadarshibhihi. Na sato vidyate pavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha, ubayorapi drushtontaha, tvanayos tattvadarshibhihi. And just for fun, I'm going to, rather than paraphrase it myself, I'm going to share a translation of the Gita by my American professor, J.A.B. Van Boyntenen, who taught the group I was in for 4 years and was very supportive in my trying to make some progress with Sanskrit. So, na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha. There is no becoming of what did not already exist. Na bhavo vidyate sataha. There is no unbecoming of what does exist. Ubayorapi drushdontaha tvanayos tattvadarshibhihi. Those who see the principles, meaning between existence and non-existence and non-being, see the boundary between these two. So just looking at this a little bit more closely, you'll see why I think in a minute. Na asataha, not non-existence, bhavaha. There is no non-existence for what is. Na abhavaha, na abhavaha, sataha. There is no unbecoming of what does exist. So there's no non-existence of what exists, and there is no unbecoming of what does exist. So why this sutra, shloka? Well, because the sutra we are about to discuss, and we have alluded to pretty much from the very beginning, um, uh, it contradicts this, which is okay because it does so within this encapsulated kind of magical alternate universe of Ashtadhyayi. And as you may have guessed, the sutra we're discussing now is 821 and number 12 in Siddhanta Comedy, which we'll come back to because it's for a particularly interesting reason, as I understand it. So 821 in Siddhanta Comedy, 821 in Ashtadhyayi and 12 in Siddhanta Comedy, Purvatra Siddham, Purvatra Siddham, Purvatra Asiddham, Purvatra Asiddham. with respect to the preceding, purvatra asiddham, non-existent. Now, asiddha can be translated in different ways, completion and so on. But both Prabhakara Sastri, in his lesson to me, used the word non-existent here, as did Professor Van Boynton in his translation of the Gita. So I think that's a useful framework for us. Now, since what's referred to as being non-existent is not stated, that tells us that this is an Adhikara Sutra. As I continually whine, if our forefathers and mothers, but forefathers mostly, had not essentially forgotten the grammar, we would have Svarita Adhikara. So we would know what pervades. But this is clear enough, just as Samhitayam was for the beginning of our Sandhi Sutras. So what this sutra pervades, how far it pervades to the very last sutra of Ashtadhyayi, which is or actually, yes, and we'll come back to that in just a moment. Also, this sutra is a dividing line, has become, and it is a dividing line for the grammar. Almost like a river is for some countries. In America, they used to say that you were east of the Mississippi or west of the Mississippi, this river that flows all the way from the north to the south in the middle of the country. As a result of that, the part of the grammar that begins with this and goes to the end is called Tripadi, the 3 chapters, and the preceding 7 books and 1 chapter are called 7 books and 1 chapter, Sapada Saptadhyayi. And now we'll take a look at how this actually applies, and keeping in mind that we are going to be thinking about it from now on, because all the rest of our 90 or so, 90 something Sandhi Sutras are in the Tripadi. So it will at least be potentially relevant. Also, you may remember that there are a number of sutras starting quite early, which are specifically exceptions to this. So not only is it not true that existent can't become non-existent and so on, but there are also little gaps in these absolutes, as we've seen before. But now in our contemporary scholars of the grammar, for instance, Professor Cardona and Professor Sharma, their discussions of this sutra go on for at least a dozen pages and include in pretty much entirely examples. Now, this is, of course, very appropriate and very useful, but I'm fascinated by the kind of global impact of this and why is it exactly where it is? I don't have an answer for that, but perhaps that will become, we'll be able to make progress towards that. But the thing that I am fascinated by and is that Batoji puts this sutra at the very beginning of his Siddhanta Kaumudi, the 12th sutra in Siddhanta Kaumudi. And why does he do that? Well, he does it in the context of explaining the complexities of Akshara Samamnaya and its evolutes, I think the word is. All of the implications that come from that, including the efforts of articulation and so on. So the only example, as much as I can understand his commentary is uh, 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 uh. And this is why. And if you look back to our discussion of the Abhyantara Prayatnaha, the internal efforts of articulation, you will see why that is. So just as a quick reminder, Abhyantara Prayatnaha, Sprishtam Prayatnam Sparshanam, Ishat Sprishtam Antasthanam, Vivritam Ushmanam Svaranam Cha. Spirishtam prayatnam sparshanam, ishad spirishtam antasthanam, vivritam ushmanam svaranam cha. And then, prasvasya avarnasya prayoge samvritam, prakriya dashayam tu vivritam eva. And we will touch on that right now. So, prasva avarnasya prayoge, short in usage is samvritam, closed. And I gave an example. When we say closed, it's not it's prasvasya avarnasya prayoge samvritam, prakriya dashayam tu vivritam eva. I find this wonderful in so many ways, but because this is the real deal. This is a saying where the grammar diverges for its own needs from the spoken language. Exactly what he's saying. Prakriya dashayam tu vivritam eva. However, in the operation of the grammar, it is open eva. It is as open, taken as open, much like what we just saw, aplutavat upastite, plutavat. So what's the crowning example of this? Well, it's the last sutra of the entire grammar. In other words, the rasva which we have been pronouncing as samvritam, which we pronounce as samvritam in our usage, from the beginning of Ashtadhyayi, we have been taking rasva as vivritam, open. Not but shorter. But not. So the very last sutra of the grammar says rasva, which we have been calling samvritam all this time, is actually now, as we're leaving the grammar, vivritam again. Becomes becomes and this is where purvatrasadam comes in, because it's saying, shh, don't tell any of the other sutras this. It's just between us now that we're going back into the world. I just think that's so wonderful. And so it goes. And when we went over this earlier, we had not gotten to, well, we hadn't really gotten very far at all. And we hadn't gotten to some of the sutras where it becomes obviously necessary, such as 61101, akasavarne dirgaha, akasavarne dirgaha. An ak followed by its savarna is replaced by a dirga. And for example, sama plus atra. Sama plus atra, by this would be samatra. Pretty simple, except a of sama and of atra in real life are not savarna. Why? Because they need to have the same place and effort of articulation, the same place and effort of articulation. And if was as it is in the outside world, which is some virtam, and it's some virtam, it would not be savarna with dirgha which is vivritam. So we are going to take the actual samvritam, the closed of atra, and pretend it is through the whole grammar. Thereby, dirgha and hrasva are savarna, and akasavarne dirgha, for example, works.